and go.
All right, welcome back to another hopefully exciting episode of the Three Wise Men Educators podcast. Once again, along with my colleagues, Mr. Ingram, Mr. White-Eye, and Mr. Savoy. All right, welcome back. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Again, hopefully, if you stumbled onto our page, you will stay a while. And if you do, please like and subscribe. Hit that like and subscribe button at the bottoms because we plan to feed you plenty more content. I know we're getting closer to the end of the school year, thank God.
Praise the
Amen.
Right?
But say it again.
Right. But that don't mean this train gonna stop. Right? That don't mean this train gonna stop over the summer, y'all. I promise
we're
you.
gonna be busy.
Right? We're gonna keep this thing rolling over the summer. Just because the kids ain't there, it means that we don't have nothing to say.
Yeah, we
All
got
right.
work to do.
We got plenty of work to do. Thank you, sir. So, with that in mind, I wanted to talk today on what I think I want to spend at least a couple of episodes discussing, and that is fighting in school, gentlemen, and the amount of fighting that we're seeing, I think, on a regular basis. And I believe in our particular area where we were for maybe a couple of years, at least it felt to me like the amount of fighting had started to go down maybe a couple of years ago. But lately it feels like it's picked up a bit more, and especially with more of our younger students in high school. So, for example, freshmen and sophomore. Um, those students, the tension seems to have picked up even further, and we're seeing a lot more suspensions. Lately, we're seeing a lot more student referrals, people having to leave school. And I know if you're a teacher out there and you're listening to what we're talking about, you have an idea of what we're talking about. So just to kind of set the stage, y'all, with where we're at. Like, Mr. White, I'll start with you. What's been maybe the worst part about seeing all the fighting lately that we're seeing in school? What's been your impression, your how you're processing it all?
Ding, 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 ding. I mean, that's kind of how our days go. It's, seemingly fights every day. Uh, it's very disheartening, Now, I should set the stage for what I'm about to say.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my brother here and I are from rural Virginia,
Right.
old country boys.
Right.
And I often tell my students that, when I was growing up, fighting was a big part of being a man growing up.
Sure.
And it was very simply to test your physical skills. Everybody can't fight. Now, please understand, I am not glorifying fighting by any means, but it was a part of the maturation process for young men, especially us country boys,
Mm-hmm.
to fight, to test one another. And it was one of these things. I remember a friend of mine from the neighborhood. I'll just call his first name Darnell. We were rivals. And to say we were rivals, we were born on the same day, April 26, 1962. Our mothers were on the same ward in UVA Hospital. Back in the 60s, of course, they segregated the black mothers. And, both of them being from the same neighborhood, gave birth to two boys on the same day. Darnell and I were friends, but we were rivals. He was a Redskin fan. Back in the day, I was a Miami Dolphin fan. So we rode the bus. So we always were antagonists, but we were friends. But we fought each other twice in our lives. And well, back in our day, and I'm sure my brother here will attest, winter was judged by blood. Now, the first time we were on the bus,
Was first one to draw blood.
First one to draw the most blood, or get the best blood.
That feels like a wrestling. It's like a wrestling rule.
And well, I'll put it this way: I feel I won the first fight because I split his lip, and that was our first fight. The second fight, I say it was a draw. And Darnell can't defend himself. God rest his soul. He died a few years back. But the second fight, we were on the bus, and he gave me a bloody nose. So we often say, "Hey, we had a draw." But the thing I remember, after we fought, we laughed, we shook hands. Hey, bro, that was a good shot you gave me, and man, that left hook caught me in the jaw. And we were done.
So it's a way is kind of testing boundaries.
It's testing boundaries, and the thing that I see now that wasn't so prevalent back when I was growing up, kids, for lack of better words, don't stay in their place. If I'm 5'6", 130 pounds, why am I trying to pick a fight with someone who's 6'6", 250 pounds? All right. Now, physically, it's no match. But see, what happens too many times is that the lesser aggressor has backup. And that's the problem that's so prevalent these days in schools is the jumping.
It's not just one.
It's just not one-on-one, and it's not about a issue that, again, most of the fights we got in were over nothing. Hey, you want to fight? Okay, let's fight. I remember in elementary school, we used to go into the bathroom, the boys' bathroom, and we turn the lights off, and we have a battle royal for about 2 minutes in the dark, and everybody's just punching away. And then we turn the lights off, but see, we weren't screaming. There was no one taping. We fought for 2 minutes and turned the lights back on and went on about our business. There was no, I'm gonna get you after school. No, 5 people jumping on one person. And what that has progressed into is that, again, I described the 2 fights I got with Darnell, split lip and a bloody nose. Nowadays, we have kids dying, kids, broken limbs and really being injured, and concussions and stabbings and shootings, and all behind disagreements. And again, please do not think that I am glorifying physical violence at all. But I just am from an era where, if you had a problem and you wanted to settle it physically, which is always going to be prevalent in society, you did it and it was over. One-on-one, it was over. And, again, Darnell and I were best friends. And, we just had to test each other, and once we found out that we were pretty equal, again, we never fought again. And we were, 14, 15 years old. And just seeing some of the injuries and hearing the aftermath of, it doesn't end at school. It goes into, the neighborhood, and somebody ends up getting shot. Somebody gets hurt really bad. And
it's a lot.
And, and the final part of what I want to say, it's not males. We're seeing more of a prevalence of fighting among females.
Yeah, we are.
And ladies, please come on.
Yeah. So, Mr. Ingram, I'd love for you to add on to that, but also, how do you talk to the students you see every day about fighting, and or those who either just got back from a fight or those who are thinking about getting into a fight? How do you talk with those students? How do you address them?
First of all, welcome back, fellas.
Yes, indeed.
Good to be back.
Welcome
Right.
back.
And probably Mr. White went on a little
I got
monologue down there.
Yeah. Welcome back. Welcome back. To answer the question direct with the how do I speak and address young people with regards to fighting, um, well, you almost don't. You really try to get to a point where you can try to figure out, well, why they fight. And because if you can get to the why, you might not have to deal with the symptoms of probably what is a larger problem. And I think that's probably what's missing, is that we're just kind of dealing with symptoms. We're not dealing with the doggone problem. I think the fighting is just it's just a symptom of something else going on in some kids' life, whatever they may or may not be. We have no idea, knowing kid to kid. We have no idea. You made mention of the girls. Well, I remember years ago, I was in the position of dean of students in the charter schools in DC. And again, brother, you was right as rain. The girls are fighting. And I said, but why are y'all fighting? What's going on? And I knew they were all LGBTQ plus young ladies. I said, do you realize what you're doing to the image of your community? Don't you want your community to get the respect that you desire? Why y'all wrecking like this? I said, Miss Ingham, you don't understand. I said, what do you mean I don't understand? Well, the boys, they're getting all the girls. And whatever girls have left, that's who we're fighting over. So there's an ecosystem where fights occur, right? Well, then you got another group of kids in their ecosystem where fights occur. So I think it's just going to be just like playing whack-a-mole in the old arcade. And when the fight comes up, we just try to hit it, but we really never get to the root of the problem. And so when I talk to kids about fighting, I just try to figure out, well, what in the world happened? And there is a reason for it, and then maybe you can help them begin to think about how they think about things and why they should be fighting and what it's going to cost them overall. So you just want to put it in a cost benefit analysis, question. Okay, how much this fight's going to cost you?
Break it down into economics, right?
At some point,
social studies teachers,
that's what we do.
There is a cost.
Yeah, I can't.
There's a cost basis. There's a cost benefit analysis you got to run.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember the general's name. Maybe y'all can help me out. Where he said, "Never fight a battle if you gain nothing by winning."
Right. Sun Tzu.
Art of War. There it is, right there. Good look. I was like, why is this? What's on the line here? Now you get ready to do this. Now that you've done it, what have you lost? What have you gained? You better start looking at this, because otherwise you're gonna lose. We come from corrections.
Yeah.
We know what the other side look like, and a lot of these kids don't understand what it looks like.
Yeah.
And we do the best we can, try to keep them out of that legal situation in the first place.
And one thing too that we often stress: you can fight until you're 17, but then after that, those become assaults and batteries. And there's no such thing as fighting as adults. We don't fight. We get assault charges, battery charges,
consequences,
maiming charges. There are consequences after you turn 18.
And therein lies might be the problem. The consequences aren't heavy enough pre 18 years of age where we can break that habit of fighting. Maybe the consequences aren't heavy enough.
Perhaps. Now, I grew up with a different background, gentlemen, than you both know. As you know, I grew up in a more urban, suburban, part of town in the Northeast. So for me, growing up with fights, and I wasn't in that many, but I when it happened, to a degree, like I much like you, I got into a fight. There was a kid that had been picking on me for a while, and I had been letting it ride for a long time. And then one day it was snowing and we were outside playing soccer, in the snow, no less. And he wanted me to be goalie, and I said I didn't want to. And I think he threw some snow at me, and that was like the last straw. And there's a kid who was, I think, a little bit smaller than me, and I had been letting it ride. And finally, I'd had enough, right? And so I tackled him down, and I hit him, and all that stuff. And it was very but then after that, weirdly enough, we became friends. Right? Like we found a way to become friends after that. Right. And I came from a generation where it was like it was either recess or maybe I'll see you after school. Like it certainly wasn't fighting in the building. Like that rarely happened. Like it was like, I'll see you after school when there's no teachers around and we can just, run this. We can just run it. But it's different now. People are quick to the trigger, right? And stuff builds. And like I said, a lot of this stuff will build, like, of course, through group chats and messages and all of that. All these things get stoked, right, along the way. And before it's like a little volcano that just simmers, right, until it finally explodes. What I like to tell my students all the time, and I deal with, this year I'm dealing with more freshmen and sophomores, well, at least more freshmen anyway, than I did in previous years, and maybe that more than you are both dealing with this year. But what I tell all my students, regardless, is you can't duck fights, but you can avoid them, right? And what I mean by that is, like, if a fight come to you, like sometimes you just gotta get to the other side. You just gotta, like you said, like some point you just come in contact with what your boundaries are, and you just crash on your boundaries, and that just happens to be what it is, right? But before that, like I said, in terms of opportunity cost, right? Economics. What is the opportunity cost? Every choice has a cost attached. That's just how the way things are.
So, if you don't mind, pardon me.
Yeah.
If I think the question is fighting in schools, or teenagers fighting. Because if it's teenagers fighting, cool, we got it. Teenagers fighting in school, just like in the building, tearing teachers, hurting teeth. That's a whole nother question that has to be dealt with.
All right.
And my problem is it hasn't been dealt with in such a way. And I don't want to elaborate of my own questions in terms of how much it costs me to break up a fight. But at some point, regardless of what it is and why a kid is fighting, the penalty for fighting inside their schoolhouse needs to be great. And the problem is it isn't. But until then, teachers are going to be put in harm's way of the kids that probably wouldn't normally be fighting, probably are fighting because now they're obligated by way of groupthink to jump in because that's my cheerleader buddy, or that's my. So this is how it just metastasizes in ways that no administrator can handle if they don't have the willingness and the the guts to bring strong a hammer to these questions. And so if the question is kids fighting in general, or are they fighting in these schools and putting all manner of educational questions in jeopardy, that's a whole nother story.
No, that's fair. That's a fair clarification to make. So to that end, there was a video that I believe all three of us have now seen with someone who was critiquing a teacher who was breaking down why we're seeing more fighting. And I think from her standpoint, I think she was talking about this more in a general sense, right? As opposed to specifically why it happens directly in school. But she did point to like a few different factors that weigh in, right? Among them, a lack of personal responsibility. Another one, parenting, right? Proper parenting and the impacts of that on the child, environment. And to that end, socioeconomic factors that, that run into systemic inequities that face certainly those of us who are, kids in urban environments, right? And so for a second, I want to stop here with discuss the idea of fighting in general, because I think there is time to get into the school part of it, and I do want to address that. But just from let's take a 300 foot high view of this, as far as fighting and young people in general, right? Because I don't know that this is necessarily a cultural thing. Like there will be people who say that, but I believe like some things that people that kids fight about in urban classes, like kids do a lot of the similar stuff in suburban areas. Like if for kids who get bullied because they're the nerdy kids, or it's cool to be the class clown, like that's no different in whether you're in predominantly black or predominantly white schools. At least to me, it doesn't feel that way, right?
Well,
But
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and you can say what you're going to say in a second, but my question to the both of you is, between those three things I said, parenting, personal responsibility, systemic inequality, all right, going back to economics, pie chart, pie graph, what is the percentage breakdown here as far as you see? Because I feel like these are all nuanced issues and somewhat interconnected, but if you had to if you chose to throw a percentage, where would you go?
Well, again, being the senior citizen that I am, I have always been taught, that there's always a time to punch somebody in the mouth. There's always a reason to punch somebody, but it's not because they said something you didn't like, or stepped on your shoe. And what we face a lot of these days, something you posted about me, that's not a reason. Something you pointed out in your personal experience. Darnell bullied me, for years. And he had a couple friends, and the three of them were a little group. Now, let me take this moment to also say, middle school, elementary school, the girls bullied the boys, and the girls fought the boys more than the boys fought the boys. And again, nature has shown us that at that time, girls are maturing a little faster. They were a little more aggressive in defending themselves than we were. But
I think that's true. Not to interrupt.
Yeah, you go ahead.
But yeah, I find I funny. I say all the time, like I feel like girls mature faster than boys do. Yet we have more girls fighting than boys. Why is that?
And again, it's hard. It's hard to explain. And again, from a male perspective, I just don't understand it. Now my dad, of course, was a teacher. Didn't encourage us to fight, but his thing was always he taught us how to fight, and protect yourself is pretty much what we did. Now again, I'm a teacher's kid. They bullied me. Again, Darnell's thing was that he constantly reminded me how he used to take my popsicle when I was a kid. He always had those twin sickles. I used to have to always break half and give it to him. And that day on the bus, again, there were some young ladies on the bus, and we were in the 8th grade, I think. So we're middle school. And again, we're trying to impress the ladies, and he just kept bringing that up. Yeah, I remember when I used to take Charles's popsicle, and all laughing and teasing me, and I had enough of that, and I just said, well, that was a long time ago. And he said, well, I'll do it now. And I, well, come on, let's go. And I had the opportunity to land the first punch, and I'm no George Foreman, but I knocked him down, and just the look on his face. But,
if you add that, just to reframe the question again, like
Mhm.
personal responsibility, parenting,
Mhm.
Mhm.
system inequities that people face. Where's your breakdown as far as which factors influence the most, second, third? Just to reframe the question
Well,
for both of y'all.
I think it's a personal choice more than anything,
Okay.
you know, and you know, growing up, I mean, we were all poor. You know, we were working class poor folks. You know, that was everybody. And again, I'm a '60s baby. Uh, you know, so I really don't think socioeconomic status had a big role in aggression or increasing opportunities for fighting. But now I also go back to the role of parents.
Mhm.
You know, now I, parents back in the day, and again, you're harking back to a distant past, but parents back in the day, if you fought, it had to be over. You know, there is no lingering. You got in a fight, or y'all done, and that's it. Now, parents were not going to be involving any of their time dealing with a little fracas between kids.
Children.
You know, they had other things to do that were more important.
Yeah.
They oftentimes, there was no mediation. You know, you mediated yourself. You know, it's over. And I think sometimes these days parents get a little too caught up in their children's lives. You know, that
Mhm.
sometimes, your child does need to be taken down a peg or two. Now, I'm not saying they need to get beat up or anything like that, but sometimes parents need to let their children learn life lessons without interfering.
All right.
You know,
Mr. Ingram, I want to get your input on this too. As far as what you're seeing, we've covered in the past. Well, I'd like you to bring us to today and what you're seeing.
Well, the way you framed it, into those thirds, it kind of reminds me of the training we used to go through back in the day, where we talked about the three-legged stool. You know, it was part school, and then part community, and then part family.
Sure.
And if any one of those legs are weak, and then the entire kid sitting on the stool falls. So that's kind of the metaphor that was kind of drilled in us over the years, in this business, right? So, I don't know if one is any more important than the other, because if any one of those things are broken down in the kid's life, then I think we see those symptoms that we've been talking about today. So, in terms of playing it forward into where we are right now, I mean, I thank God Almighty we didn't have social media.
yes,
I
indeed.
thank God Almighty, because that's the gas that was needed to bring us to this doggone fire right now. Because everything these kids are doing right now, we were doing. Matter of fact, we might have been doing more. Matter of fact, I honestly believe that we were doing more.
But we were doing
more.
But the reason why it was over
because nobody captured it and reminded us of it, and
That
nobody
part.
posted it, and nobody embarrassed us with it year in and year out. Oh yeah, I got this on you from 2 years ago.
That part.
Well, hell, back in our day, there was no way to capture that memory and bring it forward all those years. That wasn't happening.
You could lie and say it didn't
You could lie
happen.
and say it didn't happen. But now you can post it and get it reposted, and kids are dealing with this kind of stuff, and it doesn't surprise me that they're fighting over things like that, because it just won't leave them. How do we deal with that? And that's probably one of the things that we talked about before, the zero cell phone policy in school. That's one of the. I mean, these cell phones are more than just a communication problem. It's a bullying problem too, because these kids are suffering at their own hand with this tech because they don't know how to use the dang tech properly. So planning forward, my goodness, what is it going to look like? When this group of students have children, and what is this space going to look like, and how are they going to be able to cope?
And
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know what it's going to look like in the future.
something else again that I'm just seeing more problematic in this time that we're in.
Yeah.
But again, back in the day, if you got in the fire, your parents came to school, picked you up, and you went home. You know,
did you one day?
Yeah, or you had in-school suspension, or for whatever.
Yeah.
We've seen instances on the internet, and we've heard about instances all over schools, you know, in our county and others, where parents come to the school and start wrecking.
The students.
And which
parents come in and fight students.
Which is just I mean,
Or
we've
fight-
seen it.
Or fight the principal.
Oh, yeah,
Fight the principal,
what is going on?
I've seen that.
You know, and I mean,
we've seen it all.
Right.
We've seen it all. So what is tomorrow going to bring? I don't know if the masters got the answer to that question. We don't know. We don't know. Maybe some sense of morality will be restored, and the stature of the teacher position is restored. Maybe I'm just hopeful. I guess I can be prayerful that somehow, some way, those positions will be restored in the eyes of the community, which is one of those pillars that hold the kids up in the first place. So let's just hope and pray for it, brother. But how can we predict? I mean, how long you been in this business? We're getting old. We were talking about this the other day, right?
Yes,
we're getting old, and somehow we're going to have to mentor young teachers. We're in the mentorship position now.
Right, because teachers continue to leave because
teachers continue to come. Positions continue to be filled. Somebody's going to have to say, "Hey, now, you know, I know I'm old, and I know I'm a little cranky and grouchy sometimes. Come on over here and sit down. Let me holler at you for a second and help you understand what you're getting into for real. You know, one, student behavior, and then secondly, you know, administrative behavior. I mean, that's a balancing act that, you know, a young teacher coming into this profession is really going to need some help with. And could you imagine just throwing them into this fire? Kids fighting all the administrative pressures and responsibilities, and the ink is not even drawing your degree yet. And they're giving you
who teaches you
Who
teaches you in school how to deal with these situations?
Not a soul.
Nobody.
I got a grade. I went to a great school to learn how to teach. Nothing they taught me at that school prepared me for this.
Not a damn thing.
No.
So I'm praying for fellas that, you know, now that we understand what we understand, that we have to begin to mentor young teachers, young brothers. You mentioned the last show, bro. We 2% of this population is busy.
And it's a shame.
And we want to grow it.
It's
you know what I'm saying?
when
We don't want to keep saying that.
It needs to grow.
It's a shame when the measuring stick a lot of times for success as a teacher is if you survive the first year.
If you survive.
If you get through 5 years,
the fat 5.
Good luck. You know, but you know, but again, I mean, we're laughing about it, but again, I think we all feel deep in our hearts exactly the same thing. There was no one to break it down exactly how it is. You know, many times people will tell you what to expect. But their expectations and reality a lot of times are two totally different things. I expect the day to go smooth. Now the reality of that, that's not gonna happen.
Right. I got 32 of these jokers in front of me.
Exactly. And that's just for spirits, you know.
Oh my God, it's good stuff right there, fellas.
But again, back to the original question again. The role of parents, I think, has wandered so far to whatever side you want to go, and the center being the child and their success and their future somehow has gotten skewed. You know, and too many parents, you know, my child. Okay, true, but now when one of us is trying to tell you something about your child, you know, we're not the enemy.
Something
you know,
and we talked about this on a previous podcast, in fact. And so if those of you are listening and this is your first one, please go back and check one of our previous podcasts where we talk very much about the role the important role and factor that parents can play, but sometimes don't realize the amount of impact they can have in stabilizing their child and getting them to be, you know, the best version of themselves they can. And so, like, just to put a little bit of a bow on this, like, I got a kid I taught who I feel like encapsulates this kind of three-pronged issue concern deal, right? I had a kid who would skip my class all the time, right? It was one of the last classes of the day. He'd skip all the time, rarely show up, and I'd be like, "Hey, kid, why do I keep missing you from class?" And he's like, "Oh, I just be out other places." And I was like, and so I thought to ask him, I was like, your parents don't say anything about any of this? I know we give phone calls out. He's like, my parents aren't even in the country. My parents are in another country right now doing X, Y, and Z other thing, right? I think they might have been building a house or something, right? Doing some other job. He was just here with his sister. And I don't believe this was the first year. It may have been the second year. So it's just him and his sister. He's like, most of the time on my house, I'm alone. I'm in the house by myself. My sister do what she do. She's a little bit older. She takes care of me, sort of. But she's my sister, right? Sister's not a mom.
Exactly.
Right? And the only thing is, like, I had taught is like, do you talk to them? And he's like, you know, I talk to them from time to time. Right. And they just my dad's like, you know, his dad's something to the effect like, boys aren't supposed to be soft about emotional stuff, right? I think the kid had been going through a breakup, right? Now that I remember the story a little bit, had been going over a breakup with someone he was seeing, and I was checking in on him about that. And so he's like, yeah, I'm by myself. And Dad, I talked to my dad, but he's like, men ain't supposed to cry about any of that stuff. Like, and that's the extent of the parenting it gets. And that's from a country, several countries away. Right. So this is the mentoring he gets, if any at all. So what does personal responsibility look to for a kid like this, whose parents are, and this is maybe an extreme example. Not everybody's like this, but there are some where maybe they're not all the way countries away, but maybe for one reason or another, they're like, hey, I'm just trying to put food on the plate, keep electricity in the house, make sure, you know, there's food, the heat's on, and I get home after working XY number of jobs, I'm tired, right? I just want you to go to school and get an education so you can do better than me. But beyond that, they don't have enough buy-in to follow up. Like, and then when they don't do right, it comes out as anger. And it gets like, after a while, kid gets, you know, numb to it. And then
if you're used to doing whatever you want to do all the time, you know, the first time you're faced with no, you know, it's a wall, and you don't know what to do. And the best thing a lot of times they feel is to put your head down, try to butt through it, you know.
Okay, so there's your agency, there's your personal responsibility, there's your, you know, systemic issues. If you're if you're living in a place where there's not a lot of money because the only one keeping the lights on is a sister. Like, what do you have? What do you have?
Third leg is weak.
Right? It's a tough one. But, you know, in regard to that video we saw, and I think we're going to spend a little more time on this with our next episode, is to drill down a little bit further to what we see in schools. Because I am wary about people who point to problems without firsthand experience or offering attempts at solutions. Right? That concerns me, along with things like, I agree with what you're saying, but anytime, I don't know if any of y'all ever hear this out there, but if anytime someone says, I agree with part of what you're saying, but, and then they go on, it's like they go on to say what the things that are important to them. Like, we don't start with the things we agree on first. It's always like, that just feels like if I say this, it gives me permission to say what I really want to say, which is the things I disagree with. All right. So anyway, if you stayed with us this long, please, give us your comments in the chat. Tell us what you're seeing out there. If you're a teacher, we definitely want to hear from you. If you're a coach, if you're a mentor, we definitely want to hear from you. If you're a parent, we want to hear from you. What is it you're seeing out there with this epidemic of fighting, with young people? How do we address it? We're going to talk a little bit more on solution oriented and what we're seeing directly in the schools in our next episode. This is going to be 2 parts. All right. So this is part 1. All right. Part 2 is next. So stay tuned. All right. This is the 3 Wise Men Educators podcast. Once again, I'm Mr. Savoy, along with my colleagues, Mr. Ingram, Mr. White, and stay safe, y'all. And we'll talk to you soon. All right.
Peace.
Bye.